So, welcome back to the Return Festival interview sessions. Today we have two directors here. I'm very proud to have them. We have the super film Indo Silence, a great documentary by Sven, Peetom, and Juliette Dominicus. And I hope I say the names right.
It's right.
Okay, I'm always like fear I butcher the names. Yeah, you two guys made an extremely good documentary. And would you like to introduce the film to the audience?
Yeah, sure. Indo Silence is a creative documentary. There's the poster, in which we follow three Dutch-Indonesian, Indo-Dutch artists, Amada van der Elst, May Oele, and Juliette Dominicus, a filmmaker, a visual artist, and a spoken word artist, who try to break the silence about their Dutch-Indonesian history in their families through their art.
Yeah, so it was a very personal matter to you, I believe. I think I saw the film, I was very moved, and especially by the viewpoints of the different protagonists. And how long did the project need to develop? I think you guys had it always on your mind, and now it came out. Like, how long did it take from the inception to the final product, so to say?
It took us 4 years to develop the film. We actually met because we had the same idea to make this film. So we were brought together by the idea of making a film about the Dutch colonial history. And from the process of writing the treatments until the production and the release, it took 4 years.
Oh yeah, so it was. How much footage do you had in the beginning when you started with the? So we're now down to a compact 29 minutes.
Yeah. It all started we both started filming our own personal journeys before we started making this film with these three protagonists. So before already the inception of the film and these protagonists, we already had a lot of footage and a lot of ideas. But then in the end, we decided on following these three artists. And then we filmed for 9 days in total. So that's quite a lot. So we had to bring it down a lot. So for example, we see Juliette's therapy session in which she goes through therapy and does a family constellation in which she tries to explore her relationship with her family. And that session took 4 or 5 hours and we filmed everything. And we brought it down in the film to
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
But the essence, that was a very moving part of the documentary. And was it so I know some Dutch friends and they say always everybody knows it, but nobody talks about it. So is it like everybody knows it? It's like a open secret basically, and now it starts to get down a little bit the wall to talk about it.
I actually don't think everybody knows it. Like if you look at the society and how the history starts, I think a lot is still unknown. Also, Dutch people, they don't always know this history and these parts of the history. So we get to learn about the golden age, but not about this whole culture of silence. And I think now the last 5 years, there is more awareness for this part of the history as well. So
Also politically nowadays, these what happened during this time of colonization and this independence war of Indonesia, a lot of really bad things happened that also governments and other people wanted to hide from public view. And now in the Netherlands, there's this big debate on what the Dutch actually did during this colonization, but also during this time when Indonesians wanted to be independent and all these people fought against these Indonesian people from a Dutch side. And now it is coming out more. So it is silence. What you see in the film is more within families, but it's also a silence on societal level of silencing this really dark history of the Netherlands actually in the colonies of the Dutch East Indies. Yes.
Yeah, and I can't help but think about the first generation that was sort of in between everything. I cannot wrap my head around the feeling of having no connecting point. Everybody's they're against them. They have no home, and it's I can't imagine how it was for them. And it's a very personal project. I said already. The other artists in the film, are they how did you find them that they also want to come out with and tell their story?
It's actually a funny story because we built an online platform which is called Indie Zwijgen or Indo Silence. and we collect stories from other third generation people there to also give them like a platform to tell their stories. And at some point we just asked people there, hey, is there anyone who's third generation Dutch Indonesian, who's an artist, and who is willing to be part of the film? And then we got a lot of reactions to this call, and that's how we actually found our protagonists.
Yeah. And also Amara van der Els, for example, was already pretty famous back then because she like did something on national television, like a spoken word practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also I find the documentary important because here in Germany, like this was really the first time I ever heard about this, and I was like, it's very interesting, and because in the beginning it says like around 2 million people from Netherlands. I have the heritage, which is a big number. Like it's like, what is it, 17 million?
18 million.
Around.
So,
18.
yeah, it's one
like
every 9 people. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was especially moved by the scene with the uncle when he sang the song from the internation camp, and he considered it even fun, like this little spark, and that was very moving. And from the visual note, I want to ask you something, because I think like the start here with that empty room was a especially nice metaphor, because there's nothing about it, just those items and nothing else in the room, just hidden like a little globe. Did you guys came up with that concept like? How do you came about it? You made a visual thing, I guess.
Yeah, it's actually funny you see it, because the white room, it was a metaphor for the silence and everything that is not known, and we bring the only objects that we still can connect to this history. And then during the film, the room gets filled with our new interpretation of the third generation, of what this identity still means nowadays. So it was like a process we already had in mind to have this process in the film, and to see the room changing as our own search was also changing.
Yeah, I think it was a really nice metaphor, and it was very well done. And one thing I want to talk about, like the phone call with your dad in the movie.
Yeah,
he seemed very detached, and you wanted to try get more out of him, but he was like, as he would close the case already. I don't know, was he not into really talking about all that stuff?
It's actually funny, because it was the first time I had such an intense conversation with him about this topic. And of course, before I did the family constellation. So it was quite emotional as well for me to talk about it. But then he said that he doesn't feel the connection, and that he feels detached. At first, I always became a little bit like angry, like, why don't you feel it? Because your parents come from the Dutch East Indies, and why don't you feel this connection? But then, because of the family constellation, and because of the fact that he knows a lot about it but he doesn't feel it, I also found some rest with the fact that he doesn't. So it gave me a lot of insights. And actually, after this phone call, and now after the film, I have a lot of more conversations about it with him. So yeah.
Yeah, that's always the curse of the documentary. Like sometimes after it, there comes more. They open up suddenly, like, because they have time to think. And one question for both of you, like, is like, how hard was it, like, because you make a very personal documentary, but also a global level is to it. How was it to keep you detached from it and also be filmmakers at the same time?
Wow, good question. Yeah, maybe for me that was easier than for you, because I was not like a protagonist in the film, but it was really a personal journey. So it was a lot like, we're now also working on a second film, and what we try to come back to is that we're always try to feel a lot during the process, like what feels right. Also during the editing, we had so much different ways that we could tell this story, and in the end we really tried to have this word silence and had that as a key to keep on telling this story. So as kind of a compass to have everything around this silence, to tell about it.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, it was a bit more like difficult because I was also a protagonist. But I think the strength of the film is also because you see our own personal stories as well, because our story is quite similar. And first we tried to hide ourselves, but I think it actually became a strength to put our own questions in the film as well. So
yeah, I think it turned out brilliantly. We're very happy to have you. And in the end, like, our theme this year is like freedom. What is it good for? What does that mean to you?
I think for me, freedom as a third generation Dutch Indonesian person means to be able to dive into the history again and to be able to ask these questions, because there's enough emotional distance now from this history. And I think for me, freedom is by creating a film also to understand my own identity more and more.
Yeah,
Thank you.
maybe freedom is also breaking the silence in that regard, like the silence which has been there for generations. Once we can break it and we can investigate what really happened, that's a process of freedom.
Yeah, and it was like always this the line that stuck with me a bit was like, is it a burden, is it a gift, is it something in between? That was a very good thing in the movie. And yeah, in the end, just tell me how to pronounce it in in Dutch. Indisch Zwang?
In die Zwijg. Yeah.
In this Zweig.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for the interview. And for everybody, you can see Indo silent in the Zweig, I get, from Sven, Peetom, and Juliette Dominicus on Saturday, the 28th of October in Block 4 at Return Festival in Weimar in the cinema Mon Ami. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you there, and goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.